Will more than two banks fail? Is it time to buy gold? Recently, the FDIC took over two banks that were in trouble. Now we have reports that an additional 20 regional banks have in excess of $650 billion in bond losses. The Fed admits that their increase in interest rates have done little to bring inflation under control. They may well increase the amount and frequency of interest rates. Isn't it time to consider gold in your portfolio? From January 1st, 2023 to today, the price of gold is up twice as much as the S&P 500. Go to blacksandwhites.us, click on the gold bar, and reach out to Advisors Metals and ask Ira, is gold right for you? Call now. It's important. Welcome to Blacks and Whites, and joining us today is a gentleman who's been on the show a number of times, Jerome Corsi, and he's an author and economist and a man of strong opinions. Welcome, sir.
Well, Dan, it's always a great pleasure to be with you. Thank you.
Pre-show, we talked about what are the things that were important to you, and one of the things, not that they weren't all important to me, one of the things that struck me was the extent, and it almost seems weak to say it this way, the extremes at which the administration is lying to the American people. For some reason, Jerome, when I say the word lying, it doesn't seem to have, even in my own voice projection, the magnitude of what lying used to mean. Now it's everybody's lying, and we've developed a culture of lying to the American people, and I think that that's a real problem. What do you think?
Well, I think you're exactly right, Dan. This whole woke neo-Marxist left, which has dominated now Washington and the Democratic Party, certainly in all the agencies and our mainstream media, it's predicated on that truth isn't that important. They want to have, they look into the neo-Marxist future. They want us to, like John Lennon, let's imagine a world without police. Let's defund the police. Let's imagine a world without racism. But underlying it's a hatred of America. They're saying we're a racist country founded by slave owners to perpetuate slavery, and they want to deconstruct America. We're not teaching people in the schools the truth about God. God's out of the schools. We're not teaching about American exceptionalism or the Constitution or our freedoms. Instead, we've got this neo-Marxist agenda like John Lennon. Let's just imagine a future where everything is perfect and let's end capitalism and everything will be just fine. It's fundamentally a Marxist takeover, and through the Democratic Party, and the lying, the mainstream media lying. I mean, I watched Christopher Wray this week on his testimony, which was appalling, that the Department of Justice is allowing the entire Biden crime family to get away with all kinds of bribery, selling out America to China, selling out America to Ukraine, this corruption, the drugs in the White House, and the Department of Justice does nothing. Yet Donald Trump is being charged under a 1917 Espionage Act, which is not about classified documents. That Espionage Act is like giving troop movements away to the enemy. You know, Chelsea Manning was the last person who was indicted under that law. It's an old law. And the idea that Biden is going to have his chief rival, who's likely to beat him in the 2024 presidential election, if we have a fair election, criminal charges. This is what they do in banana republics. I mean, it's appalling to me, the lies that are being told, and the mainstream media repeating these lies. I'm desperately worried about Ukraine, because I think, you know, this goes back to 2013 when Hillary Clinton, as Secretary of State, started taking money into the Clinton Foundation from an oligarch in Ukraine named Pinochet. And then the State Department and Soros staged the Maidan rebellion and deposed a leader duly elected in Ukraine, was favorable to Russia, Yanukovych. Now we've got a war with NATO threatening to deny Russia, right at Russia's borders. The point is that we're supporting the western part of Iran, which has always been neo-Nazi. These aren't freedom fighters. These are the neo-Nazi brigades with Nazi signals, Nazi symbols, Nazi ideology. That's who we're supporting, and the American people aren't being told this. And and the idea we're going to give cluster bombs and move all this ordnance into Ukraine, Russia's pretty soon going to say, look, if you guys keep supplying Ukraine with all this military equipment, we're at war with NATO. And Russia and the United States, Russia's got nuclear weapons in Belarus. This could become a nuclear conflict very quickly, and these neo-Marxist demons can only destroy it. It really concerns me how much we're being lied to. I've written a book on this, on the climate change, which I also want to make sure everybody understands that's another big lie.
Yeah, I have been writing pretty extensively for some time how the money that has flowed from NATO and from the United States into Ukraine for military arms is functionally made Ukraine the third largest army in the world. And with no accountability to our government has no accountability to the American people and to Congress of where they're spending the money. And nobody seems to care that we have contributed almost $200 billion to Ukraine, and nobody knows where it went or if it went. Then we have, in this past 10 days, the president of the United States on the world stage saying we're running out of 155 millimeter shells. Now, if we're running out of 155 millimeter shells and the Chinese decide they want to do something against Taiwan, we're not going to have the military supplies to support the Taiwanese government or even deploy there because we don't have the equipment. We give it all to Ukraine.
Well, this and also the only winners here are the arms dealers. I mean, they're making a fortune. Look, we had on Biden first under COVID. The Biden administration gave the pharmaceutical drugs a huge billion dollar payday, and now they're giving the billion dollar payday to the arms dealers in a war that, Biden doesn't seem to have a clue what's going on. We abandoned all this military equipment in Afghanistan, just walked away from it, and now we're sending all this military equipment to Ukraine and no idea what results we're getting. I mean, I think I've seen reports of how many troops, 26,000 troops have been lost by Ukraine in this counteroffensive alone. These tanks and everything we're sending over there are being destroyed by Russia. And Russia's giving signals that if we amp this up with F-16s, and Germany is announcing they're putting a German tank manufacturing facility in Ukraine, I mean, it's insane. It's like, we want to go to war with Russia. Well, I don't want a war with Russia over Ukraine. Ukraine's one of the most corrupt countries on the face of the earth, and the money's being stolen. There's billions and billions and billions of dollars. We just print more, and it's going to cause a massive recession. Dan, the lies being told, the fact that we can't get any truth out. I'm writing about this as constantly as I can. The climate change movement is a complete hoax. The whole idea of, and I've written a book about that. This is done extremely well, my book about the truth. And I'm doing everything about the truth about energy, global warming, and climate change. My new website is thetruthcentral.com. And what I'm saying is that carbon dioxide is not the knob of the Earth's temperature. The sun is. That big, yellow thing up in the sky is not a tree ornament. That's the sun. And that's our major source of light and heat. And this has been demonstrated by legitimate science going back hundreds of years, that when the sun burns hot, we have a warming period. Right now, the sun is in cycle 25. It's hotter than cycle 24. It's still over 300 years, the sun has been burning less than it was prior to this, 300 or 400 years ago. And the sun varies. When we have a elliptical orbit, the Milankovitch cycle is very elliptical. We get farthest from the sun about every 100,000 years. We have an ice age, and it won't matter how much carbon dioxide there is here. These forces are way more important, but it's neo-Marxist because hydrocarbon fuels emit carbon dioxide, and carbon dioxide is a greenhouse gas. The left says, well, we have to quit using hydrocarbon fuels. It's just their new excuse to end capitalism. It's a depopulationist movement. Take a listen to the World Economic Forum. They're saying there's too many people in the world. Of course, Klaus Schwab doesn't think he's one of the too many. They always want to preserve themselves. We're destroying the U.S. middle class. We're going into where the oligarchs are in control. They're extremely wealthy. They're lying to us. They want us to walk into our own servitude. We're getting the technology which will allow them to control totalitarianism. We're not allowed to dissent, because if we do, it's not politically correct and we're racist or sexist. But Dan, this is insane. How many genders can there be? You know, do you really want to have, do we really want to have transgenders in the kindergarten? You know, this is insane. It's the kind of paganism, insanity, schizophrenia, Marxist utopian that we can create the perfect world without God. I'm very fearful of where this is right now. I came back after Mueller tried to imprison me, had to take a little time off, and then it basically destroyed my marriage of 32 years. So I'm now, though, determined to come back and to get very active again. God is upon me that if we don't do something to get this message out, if we don't encourage people, 2 Chronicles 7:14, to, join me in repenting, that asking God to forgive us for letting God be taken out of our schools, and Roe v. Wade to let so many children be killed in abortions. We've got to recover the fundamental values that our founding fathers had, which was a Christian nation, a nation in which the values from a God-fearing people could be maintained. And what's happening now is what our founding fathers warned: this country could not be held together by a group that doesn't believe God exists.
I absolutely agree with you. I think that we have been lied to, manipulated, misled, whatever you want to say, under a specific purpose. They had a mission or a goal to destroy this country. There are some pockets, I won't say a lot, some pockets of some Americans who disagree and are trying to do something about it. But it's a major uphill battle when you're trying to fight against the administration. Show us to cover that book one more time, Mark.
Yes, thank you very much. It's the truth about energy, global warming, and climate change. And it's the exposing climate lies in an age of disinformation. It's the first of 3 books of what I'm calling the Great Awakening trilogy. And the second book will be out pretty soon about neo-Marxism and cultural Maoism and anarchy. But Dan, we could desperately got to try to get people awake to see how much they're being lied to.
Right. Now you have the other, an advanced copy of the other book?
Yeah, this other book is right now, we'll talk about it maybe in the second segment here. It's just out, and it's on the coming global economic crisis and the historic gold rush that's going to follow. I think our dollars are being destroyed. The money is, we're in a period where we're going to be having a very, very deep recession. And this book is now being offered on my website, The Truth Central. You can get it free. There's an 800 number to call, and we'll discuss that more in the second segment.
And we'll be right back with Jerome Corsi to talk about his new book. Inflation for most people is causing them to use their credit cards to try and make up for income shortfalls. How big is this problem? In the second quarter of 2022, Americans added $46 billion to their credit card balances. Some of that could be you. The Federal Reserve Consumer Credit Report showed that the rate of interest on credit cards went from 14.56 to 16.65%. Those Americans struggling with credit card debt saw their delinquency rates escalate from 1.66% to 1.81%. The Cambridge Debt Consolidation Program may be able to help you reduce the interest rates by 2/3 and cut your time to pay off the debt from 30 years to as little as 5 years. If you're struggling and you want professional and objective help getting your credit house in order, then call 1-855-435-2066 or back. And we're speaking with Jerome Corsi about his new book, just out. You got a copy you can show us there, Jerome?
Thank you very much, Dan. That's the cover right there. And you can see it's the coming global crash is going to cause a historic gold rush. And this is a book. It's, I'm detailing why I think we're going into a massive economic crisis. By the way, it's on my website, and you can get it free. My co-author is Swiss America. We've worked together for a long time. And there's an 800 number on The Truth Social. Truth, that's Trump. The Truth Central, that's me. TheTruthCentral.com. TheTruthCentral.com.
Okay.
Middle of page, 800 number, you can get the book free.
You know, Mark, there's been a lot of conversation about China and the possibility of World War III with the United States over Taiwan. I believe we already had World War III. It was the pandemic. Russia attacked the world by spreading the virus. Yes, it had its own casualties, but both sides generally do have casualties in a war.
You mean
But the
China?
number of people.
China, you mean China?
China, I'm sorry. China had its casualties, but you expect casualties on both sides of a war. But if you look at the amount of damage that this attack has done to the rest of the world from China, it was a war. It was a chemical biological war that didn't fire any bullets, but millions of people died due to bad policy around the world. Now you're talking about in your new book, the demand will increase for gold because you're expecting a very significant recession. Are you expecting a recession before the 2024 election?
Yes, I think it's already started. I mean, first of all, and it's intentional. Again, it's this neo-Marxist group wants to destroy America. And let me point out a few things. We have right now a $33 trillion national debt. The Biden administration is printing money like crazy, and the debt limit has now been suspended for 2 years. We've just reached $1 trillion in the interest payments on the debt, which is unsustainable. This is an enormous amount of money. And what the Federal Reserve is doing is that the Treasury issues debt, Treasury bonds, and the Federal Reserve buys them, plus the other agency bonds, mortgage-backed securities, for instance. Now, this is like a Ponzi scheme. I mean, there's nothing behind this. There's no gold behind this. So the inflation is out of control. The recent consumer price index was down a little bit. That's because the price of energy is down worldwide because we've already gone into the beginning of a global recession. Demand is less. In Europe, they've already declared Germany is in a recession, and Germany is deindustrializing. Price of energy is very high right now in Germany, and Germany shut down its 3 nuclear power plants. Here, this global warming hoax is having us go to less powerful, more expensive forms of energy. The middle class, take $100 and see what it buys at a grocery store. The middle class today is getting squeezed, and it's intentional. Now, the bubble that's going to burst this time is commercial real estate. Commercial real estate in our cities is up to 30% vacant. These are buildings that have trillions of dollars, probably $1.56 trillion over the next few months. Commercial real estate is going to get refinanced, and the buildings aren't worth what they are on the books. So when they come to be refinanced, there's going to be major losses. And already we're seeing property owners or large organizations that own these hotels and office buildings are walking away from their commercial real estate loans, which means huge defaults. And the defaults are then packaged into securities, mortgage-backed, commercial real estate mortgage-backed securities, which then default for the bondholders, which may be your retirement fund. Now, when this bubble burst, like in 2008, and the subprime real estate market burst, we had bank failures that were massive. We've already seen some, Silicon Valley Bank and others. But we're combining the 1970s, when we had an energy crisis under Jimmy Carter, with the 2008 bubble, the subprime real estate. Now we've got a energy crisis with climate change forcing us to go to all this expensive technology that does not really work, solar, wind, and a battery. By the way, there's a large inventory of unsold electric vehicles sitting in dealerships today because people are realizing that they don't really work. Batteries are very expensive. They burn. They can cause fires. These have to be recharged. They're really not long distance vehicles. We don't have the infrastructure for them. I mean, this is a disaster. And when the economy crashes, it's going to be a very, very deep crash, which already started. Families are going to lose their homes. People are going to have to choose between paying the mortgage and feeding the family. And jobs are not being created. The jobs that are being created are people taking second jobs in order to have ends meet. So we are in a cycle like 1929. 1920s were roaring 20s. 2013 to the pandemic was a good economic time. It's a good economic time under Donald Trump. Well, now we're going to have 1929 stock market crash, telling people the stock market could crash in October, could drop 10,000 points in a day. And there won't be, if you're not out of it already, get out now, because it's going to crash. These things are inevitable. They're already baked in. And so therefore, once it crashes, then we have a deep recession. Then we have World War II, the Depression through the 30s, then World War II. Well, here we have the potential of war with both Russia and China developing, and the Biden administration's given a green light to Iran. Iran's about ready to test a nuclear weapon. When Iran gets it, I've written 3 books on this. My first was 2006, Atomic Iran. Iran will use that bomb to go against Israel. We have the whole world is moving towards nuclear war. I never thought I'd see this happen in my lifetime. And Dan, the reason I'm warning people is if they don't get some gold now, Nixon took us off the gold standard in 1971. Gold was $35 an ounce. After Jimmy Carter's energy crisis, 1981, Reagan came in with Paul Volcker. They raised interest rates to over 20%. Gold went from $35 an ounce to $843 an ounce. In 2008, 2009, with that collapse, gold in 2010 was $1,426 an ounce, not quite doubled. The pandemic, gold hit its high of $2,074.60 on March 8th, 2022. Gold could double again in this crisis. When our dollar is under challenge, we're having the BRIC nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and they're being joined by a lot of other countries. They want to create their own currency. They want to stop using the dollar in international trade. We're going to see a possible gold-backed currency from the BRIC nations. They're moving away. They're de-dollarizing. Russia's just creating a central bank ruble. The dollar is very, very weak right now. And if people have their IRAs or their 401ks in the stock market, and the stock market drops 10,000 points, and you're in mutual funds that are in the stock market, you're going to lose in your retirement funds. You may never gain that back in your lifetime. I'm encouraging people to talk to their experts. There are experts out there, legitimate firms who deal in gold and silver, and talk to them about getting your IRAs and 401ks, at least some, in gold to protect against the dollar crash, which is about to occur. And Dad, I'm passionate about this because I don't want to see the American middle class wiped out. If it is wiped out, it could be hundreds of years before we come back.
Let's stay with what you're talking about, but let me throw you a twist. We've got a presidential election in 2024. Right now, Donald Trump is the leading candidate on the Republican side, and there's no real serious threat to Joe Biden if he chooses to run in 2024. So we got 3 minutes, 2 scenarios. Biden wins, Trump wins. How does either one affect your thought about a major recession?
If Biden wins, I fear for this country and the world. If Trump wins, he's going to have to be a stronger president the second time. Jim Jordan was right the other day with Christopher Wray. He said, let's move the Department of Justice to Alabama. Let's move the entire federal bureaucracy to Death Valley or some other place. Give them air conditioners or give them wind turbines and see how many want to move. We've got a bureaucratic state that is neo-Marxist. If the Democratic Party, I pray that we'll have a fair election, but people have got to be vigilant. And Dan, I'm really at the point of encouraging people. we've got to ask God to intervene. If God gets involved, we can solve this problem. We stay in a godless world. If we're going to have transgenders teach our children in kindergarten, we're going to have to accept this nonsense that white people are inherently racist, all this nonsense and lies that we're being told. We've got to start saying no. We've got to get to the truth. TheTruthCentral.com is everything I'm doing right now is saying, I don't care how much people, criticize me or whatever, but we've got to say the truth. They already tried to put me in prison once with Mueller. I refused their plea. They gave me a plea deal. I refused to take it. They did not indict me. And so therefore, I think the Bible says, fear not. Let's fear not. Let's tell the truth. But we have got to have a major, major awakening throughout America and a coming back to God in order to save this nation.
What you said, Trump has to be stronger. What does he have to do differently than he did before?
He's got to realize that in Washington, he can't trust the people who come to him as his friends. He's got to bring his own group of people that he can trust, very small group. And he's got to understand that the Washington bureaucracy will lie to him, as they did, that he can't trust any of them. He's got to start moving them out of Washington. He's got to break the back of this bureaucracy. He's got to get spending in order. He's got to tell the Washington Times and New York Post, he doesn't care what they say. Got to basically run his own administration with a very small group of people and get back to the Constitution and not care about the consequences, not read the Journal or the Wall Street Journal or the newspapers. He's got to pray and get in there and restore America by returning us to limited government and getting us back on some kind of a gold standard, getting our currency in order, and starting from the fundamentals. Putting God back into America would be the first start. But don't trust anybody in Washington. Harry Truman was right. If you want a friend in Washington, buy a dog.
We've been having a fascinating conversation with Jerome Corsi. And thank you for joining us today. It shares your insight. And we'll have you on again soon.
Dan, thank you for the opportunity. God bless, and God bless your audience.
We'll be right back. We are Americans, male and female, from many races and cultures from all over the world. One thing above all else is we are patriots who protect our nation and defend, when necessary, our Constitution from attacks both foreign and domestic. Today, as American patriots, we must take back our country from those who want to destroy it and us. We must start by taking back our children and their education. Parents, not unions, should be in charge of our children's education. We must be sure that they are taught about the greatness of America and its people. Our children should not be indoctrinated with the belief that parents are racist and are evil and trying to destroy the world. As patriots, we must take back our country from foreign nations who want to destroy us and our way of life. Yes, as patriots, we want America to be first. We want an open and fair trade policy, energy independence, safe cities, and secure borders where we can grow and prosper as a nation of free people. Become an American patriot. Help take back America by voting Republican in the November. Thank you for joining us today, and we'd like to hear your comments or questions. So go to bwradionetwork.com. That's bwradionetwork.com and give us your questions or comments. And thanks for joining us today.